My Wife's Secret Story. Part 1. The Golden Years and the First Crack. For 20 long, beautiful years, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. My name is Araful, and I have lived my life with a simple philosophy. A happy home is the greatest wealth one can possess. My wife, Maya, was the center of that happiness. We met in our early 20s, two young souls in a bustling city, and from the moment I saw her, I knew she was the one. She was quiet, graceful, and had a smile that could light up the darkest room. We built our life together brick by brick, from a tiny rented apartment to a comfortable suburban house with a garden that Maya tended to with obsessive care. We grew jasmine, marigolds, and roses, and our neighbors often stopped by just to admire the fragrance that drifted from our porch. Our marriage was the kind people talked about at weddings. We never had those explosive arguments that seemed to plague our friends. We shared everything: our morning tea, our bank accounts, our dreams for the future, and the comfortable silence of two people who truly understood each other. Maya was a dedicated housewife, a woman of routine and stability. She knew exactly how I liked my tea, and I knew exactly which books she loved to read on rainy afternoons. There were no secrets between us, or so I thought. We were like two books on a shelf. Side by side, their stories intertwined so deeply that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. But 6 months ago, the first crack appeared in the glass. It wasn't a sudden break, but a slow, creeping fissure that started with a piece of plastic and glass, her smartphone. Maya had never been a tech-savvy person. For 19 years, her phone was nothing more than a tool for calling the grocer or her sister. She would leave it on the dining table, the screen facing up, often forgetting to charge it for days. I had the password and she had mine, though we never felt the need to check. But then she bought a new phone, and everything changed. Suddenly, the phone was never out of her sight. She began carrying it in her apron pocket while she cooked. She took it into the garden, and most strangely, she began taking it into the bathroom. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she's listening to music, I told myself. But 20 minutes turned into 40, and 40 minutes turned into an hour. I would stand in the hallway, the sound of the running faucet muffled by the heavy door, and I could hear it, the rapid, rhythmic tapping of fingers on a screen. When she finally emerged, her eyes would be darting around, her face slightly flushed. "Everything okay in there, Maya?" I asked one evening, trying to sound casual. "Yes, Araful, just reading some articles. You know how it is. Once you start scrolling, you can't stop," she said, her voice a pitch higher than usual. She didn't look at me. She walked straight to the kitchen and started clattering pots and pans with an intensity that didn't match the situation. The suspicion didn't arrive all at once. It was a slow poison. I started noticing that whenever I walked into a room, she would quickly flip her phone over or slide it under a cushion. Her behavior became erratic. She, who was usually so calm, began to snap at me for the smallest things. If I asked who she was texting, she would get defensive. "Don't I have any right to privacy after 20 years?" she would shout. "Are you a policeman or my husband?" I was stunned. Privacy was never a word we used in this house. We were one. Why did she suddenly need a wall between us? Part 2. The Whispers in the Dark. The nights became the hardest. One night around 2 a.m., I woke up to a faint blue glow. Maya wasn't beside me. I looked toward the window and saw her sitting on the floor, huddled in a corner, her face illuminated by the harsh light of her phone. She was typing furiously, her lips moving as if she were rehearsing what she was writing. Every few seconds, a notification would chime, a soft, muted sound, and her face would light up with a mixture of pain and longing. I stayed still, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I watched her for 10 minutes. She looked so vulnerable, yet so distant. She looked like a woman possessed by a ghost. Eventually, she let out a long, shaky sigh and tucked the phone under her pillow before climbing back into bed. She thought I was asleep, but I stayed awake until the sun came up, staring at the ceiling and wondering who was on the other side of that screen. The next morning, I tried to check her phone while she was in the shower. To my horror, the password had been changed. The simple 1234 we both used was gone. I tried her birthday, our anniversary, my birthday. Nothing worked. The phone was locked tight, a digital vault containing a life I knew nothing about. I decided to seek advice. I called my oldest friend, Rafiq. We had gone to university together and had seen each other through every crisis. We met at a tea stall near the park, the same place we used to go when we were young and full of dreams. "She's acting like a teenager with a crush, Rafiq," I said, my voice trembling. "The bathroom, the password, the midnight texting, what else could it be?" Rafiq sighed, stirring his tea. "Araful, you've been married for 20 years. People change. Maybe she's just bored, or maybe it's some online game. My wife spends hours on that Candy Crush thing." "It's not a game, Rafiq," I said. I saw her face. She was crying. And then there are the errands. The errands were the latest development. Maya, who usually hated driving in traffic, started volunteering to go to the market 3 times a week. She would leave at noon and not return until 5. When she came back, she would have a single bag of vegetables or a small loaf of bread, but she looked exhausted, as if she had just run a marathon. "I think she's seeing someone," I whispered, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. "Who else would she spend 5 hours with?" Rafiq looks concerned. "Look, don't jump to conclusions. Maya is the most loyal woman I know, but if you're really worried, why don't you see where she goes?" I hated the idea. I felt like a criminal, a stalker, but the doubt was eating me alive. It was better to know the truth even if it destroyed me than to live in this half-light of suspicion. Part 3. The Paper Trail. The following Monday, I decided to do some digging into our finances. We had a joint savings account meant for our retirement and for any medical emergencies. I logged into our online banking, thankfully the password there hadn't changed, and started scrolling through the recent transactions. My breath hitched. In the last 4 months, nearly 5 lakhs had been withdrawn in small, irregular amounts. Most of them were direct transfers to an account held by someone named Sultana R. Sultana R. The name meant nothing to me. I went through our wedding album, our contact lists, our old letters. No Sultana. I searched on social media, but there were 1,000 Sultanas. My mind went to a dark place. Was Maya being blackmailed? Was she paying off a debt I didn't know about? Or was she supporting a second family? The thought was absurd, yet in the absence of truth, the mind creates monsters. I began to watch her even more closely. I noticed that whenever I walked into a room, she would quickly flip her phone over or slide it under a cushion. Her behavior became erratic. She, who was usually so calm, began to snap at me for the smallest things. If I asked who she was texting, she would get defensive. "Don't I have any right to privacy after 20 years?" she would shout. "Are you a policeman or my husband?" I was stunned. Privacy was never a word we used in this house. We were one. Why did she suddenly need a wall between us? Part 4. The Shadow in the Rain. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. It was a gloomy, rainy day, the kind that makes you want to stay indoors with a warm blanket. But Maya was buzzing with energy. She spent the morning in the kitchen, the aroma of spices filling the house. She packed the tiffin carrier, dressed in a simple but elegant cotton sari, and checked her reflection in the mirror 3 times. "I'm going out now, Araful," she said, her voice sounding breathless. "The traffic will be bad because of the rain, so don't wait for me for tea." I nodded, pretending to be absorbed in a book. The moment I heard her car pull out of the driveway, I grabbed my keys and headed for my own car. Following someone in the rain is easier than it sounds. The spray from the tires and the rhythmic motion of the wipers provide a sort of cover. She drove across the city, far away from our neighborhood and the familiar markets. She entered a part of town I rarely visited, a place of old, crowded apartment blocks and narrow alleys where the laundry hung from balconies like colorful flags. She parked her car in front of a particularly weathered building. It was a 5-story structure with peeling yellow paint and a rusted gate. I parked half a block away, my heart drumming a frantic rhythm against my chest. I watched as she got out, shielding the tiffin carrier with her umbrella. Then, the door to the building opened. A young woman stepped out. She looked to be in her early 20s. She was wearing a simple salwar kameez, and even from a distance, something about her was hauntingly familiar. Maya dropped her umbrella and threw her arms around the girl. They stood there in the rain, hugging with a desperation that looked like hunger. I saw the girl's face. She was crying, her shoulders shaking. Maya was stroking her hair, whispering into her ear, her own face wet with tears that weren't from the rain. The girl took the tiffin carrier and the two of them went inside. I sat in my car frozen. My mind was a whirlpool of questions. Was this a sister? A niece? No, Maya's sister lived in a different city, and we saw her every month. And the resemblance, the way the girl tilted her head, the shape of her eyes, it was like looking at a younger version of Maya.